So we have a little impromptu presentation that's not on the agenda. It's a little overview of something that we gave to the hackers for the big Brand Hackathon, and we wanted to share it here. So not worried about a full crowd or anything. We'd just like to take you through some of the content and what made it a big Brand Hackathon versus a developer weekend. So this opening slide is actually a pretty good metaphor, not just because we're here at the City by the Bay, but for a lot of brands, when they take a look at mobile and the deep stack of how to hack into mobile, and even SocialLoco, there is a lot of fog there, and it isn't really a clean bridge going both directions. So our big Brand Hackathon, we use this bridge as a pretty good metaphor for what we were trying to accomplish, what our objectives were for the weekend. So I'm Mark Silva. I'm the SVP of Emerging Platforms at Anthem Worldwide, a big brand development agency that helps some of the biggest CPG brands in the world. And so we wanted to talk about elephants, whales, and other metaphors of massive scale because it just seems to help. And you'll see by the numbers that we're going to throw out there in terms of the size of the opportunity, the scale isn't an accidental or a boastful thing to be talking about with big brands. It's a reality of theirs. Operationalizing in 2,000 stores for the Home Depot all the way to the frontline folks isn't a trivial thing. So what seems like something that would be very easy to implement could become incredibly operationally complex. So whales in Vegas, you have to spend $500 million in an hour to be called a whale in Vegas. Whales in social gaming are the 1% of the people that actually pay for their social games, anywhere from 1 to 5%, and we're seeing that bear out in mobile as well. And then elephants, I think, are also a nice metaphor because as we went to the F8s and we went to the social hacks and now the mobile hacks, and one thing that was really clear to us was there was something missing in the room, and it was the big brands. And so we were really experimenting with what would happen if we put actual big brands in the room and allowed people to hack over them. So brands are like elephants. What brands are going to embrace the digital age? If you think about the top internet categories, the top spinners in internet, they're retail, financial services, telecom, automotive, computing, and travel, and they've all transformed their business more or less to do so. If you think about selling a $1 soft drink or a candy bar or even set of screws, not so much. So the biggest growth opportunity for digital is going to be in CPG, consumer packaged goods, media, and entertainment. And to dimensionalize that a little bit further, as Dave Morgan, a friend of mine that runs Simul Media, formerly with Dakota, likes to say, TV's like the internet, but with a lot more zeros. We're talking about $175 billion spent on TV, and everybody knows what else is going on TV right now, right? They're sitting there with their tablets and their phones. There's 3 or 4 screens open now. And so that's really the opportunity we're starting to break into. And you look at that little green bar there, that little green bar is internet advertising versus the traditional dollars. And so one of the things that we just have to caution in terms of enthusiasm is a lot of times when the dollars move from offline to online, they go from offline dollars to digital pennies. So I think when people quantify these things, you should put it through a little bit of a sniff test as well. But it is a huge opportunity, and we know that things like social TV and other areas are areas that brands are really leaning into. So with mobile, we're not just talking about marketing, though. We're also talking about new markets. In Q1, total retail was over $1 trillion, and total e-com was $53 billion. So you take a look at the size of the opportunity here, not just in terms of marketing and ad tech, but you also take a look at digital when you've got the smartphone in the retail environment. You're talking about $1 trillion opportunity. And recently we had Walmart out to present at a conference, and Paul Cousineau, their head of development, of mobile development, said, of course we look at .com, but when we look at .com and tablets, a lot of times what we're thinking about is replacement for basically PC use. But more and more as we start thinking about the smartphone and we start seeing patterns that are radically different than and accretive to the .com performance. But .com wasn't enough for them to be thinking about. They're actually thinking about, well, how do we actually mobilize the stores, and so create better experiences within stores. This isn't the Walmart I grew up with. This is an incredibly innovative, fast-moving company that's bringing just the kind of talent that you see at Google and at HP and other places, Nokia, are showing up here. And they're not just thinking about it in the store because that's the last mile. They're actually saying, okay, but how do I actually take a look at all the channels where you are and all the ways that you want to input? So why are brands setting up shop, investing, acquiring, coming to the Valley? Well, everybody's seen the classic Blockbuster demise. I don't know, if you're like me, you probably wanted to go to Blockbuster and say, please, I'll put it in the mail for you. Just let me return it for you. We know where this is going. And a lot of the incumbent businesses, even if you think about the Home Depot and Best Buy and some of these other companies, are leaning heavily into digital as a way of transforming to avoid this. But they're doing more than just, setting up shop. They're coming out here. So, a couple of good examples of that through acquisitions. You see Walmart Labs buying Cosmix, Grabble, Set Direction, One Riot, a small development team mobile development team out of Portland that was kind of more like an agency. So they're not acquiring the obvious kind of things. We heard about Home Depot. Everybody see about or know about what the Red Beacon is? So Red Beacon's kind of like a Yelp or an Angie's List, but for day workers. How smart is that? To be selling do-it-yourself stuff and then go, but maybe you don't want to do it yourself. Well, we've got someone here that can help you. So it's helping people do things, and it was that brand promise that drove them to start innovating and actually acquiring real IP companies. So the acquirers aren't the usual path just to Facebook, who's going to be up here in a moment, or to Google, but they could actually be these CPGs. Big brand investment. Anybody hear about Physic Ventures? So Physic Ventures, two major LPs, limited partners, are Unilever and PepsiCo, who also have a partnership with the Pepsi-Lipton partnership. But not only do they put capital into this venture firm, and that venture firm is hunting aggressively for quantified self, for a whole thesis around making life better and healthier. But they're also acquiring stakes in companies. So they recently bought a stake in Yummly, and the structure of that deal is really fascinating for a startup because it wasn't just investment, it was also a commitment to spend some of the big brand dollars that they're spending in TV and print, but to spend it on behalf of publicizing Yummly and helping them acquire more users. Obviously, American Express established its own $100 million fund for payments, and we've even seen ad agencies like mine, like Publicis and others, creating their own funds. Big brands are setting up shop. Anybody hear about Beer Garage? What a great name, what a great idea. So Anheuser-Busch CEO, Brito, is a former Stanford grad, so he knows that when you draw a 25 miles circumference around Palo Alto, you get to about 80% of the venture wealth generated in the United States. And so he's investing and bringing his teams out there, and now he's actually set up an innovation. That former head of innovation for T-Mobile is one of the guys there in the Beer Garage, a guy named Winston Wang. Best Buy's out here. Procter & Gamble has Sunny Jondial. And actually, interestingly enough, Sunny went to a semi-competitor, Kraft, and to Best Buy and said, hey, why don't we help this Shopkick? It's a good idea. We should be using it as a platform together, and let's actually help mature that. So they weren't on their board, but they met with them every week, and they helped them mature their product so that it aligned with what the brands needed. Really, really innovative way of starting to break down the walls and starting to embrace some of the ecosystem. So we actually call it a geekosystem. Somewhere between capital and technology is a very clear route and relationship. Somewhere between agency and marketer, there's a good relationship. That's created value over time. But when you start pulling it together, it's nowhere near as pretty or as neat as this would belie. It's actually a pretty messy area that needs a lot of light shone on it. But it really is, within this intersection is where we see the greatest value creation happening. And we believe, though, that the value creation isn't really just symmetrical. We actually think that technology is going to outstrip all others in terms of its wealth creation, culture creation, and value creation over time. And we're already seeing that. happening in real time. And that's why big brands are coming out here and taking a look at it and thinking about it as an ecosystem, not just us doing well in our own channel of the ecosystem, but how do we all work together? So Eric Ashworth, our head of strategy at Shock and Anthem, likes to say that all change is event-driven. And so when we put on this big brand hackathon, it was with that in mind. So a couple of folks came to us and said, oh, you're putting on this big brand hackathon. Isn't that a great way to get cheap labor? And frankly, with a really, really great idea, I can tell everybody in the Valley here, you don't have to worry about any brand stealing it. If it's a really great idea, you're going to have to beat them over the head with it before they finally adopt it. It's not about ideation. In fact, agencies and even internally, their internal teams are phenomenal at ideation. So it isn't about can you have an idea or can you get some IP out of this. What the real goal of it was to engage the ecosystem and was to do some rapid learning on the approach to prototyping, the approach to thinking about the internet stack and the mobile stack in a much more sophisticated way, and to even advance their culture. And I think that culture piece is probably the greatest win here in terms of what we saw happening with the Big Brand Hackathon. I can certainly show a PowerPoint deck or a keynote on what is going on in the Valley, but when you actually come here and have your eyes peeled back like Clockwork Orange and experience it for 2 days, it's transformative. And I know the CMO of the Home Depot, Trish Mueller, is going back to Atlanta today with real fire in the belly about what mobile development can mean for their brand. So brands are coming with new weapons. That elephant in the room isn't just some tired-looking large behemoth. It's actually, they're looking at ways to scale. They're looking at ways to get to real scale and do it very fast. They're looking at helping adapt technology, to be advisory, to be partners, to be strategic, and to be validating. And so we threw this hackathon not quite sure where some of that would happen. And by the end of it, we could tell you that the difference between a big brand hackathon and developer weekend was actually access to brands. There were technologies brands wouldn't have considered for another year or two that now they may be considering and putting in their priority list. There were developers that they would never have had conversations with that they were having conversations with. So it was really this access to brands that changed the tone. And as you see here at the SocialLoco conference, when you see an emerging space like this, a lot of us throw our cards on the table and we get rid of it, and you'll have the CEO of one of the largest technical events, Susan McDermott, here. We'll have the CEOs. We'll have, of course, Emily, the head of Places for Facebook, here. We'll have Marissa Meyer or Fred Wilson on this stage, and then jamming with everybody, because it isn't about the seniority or the amount of miles that we have in this industry. It's about figuring out this space right now the way it is. And again, events are a great way to do that. That's why we sponsored the Big Brand Hackathon and brought it to life. And so if you'd like to go on a similar journey, happy to share with you some of the learnings that we had both as a pre-mortem and a post-mortem. If any brands are out there are interested in having a big brand hackathon or participating in one, we're going to be doing more of these in the fall. Welcome, become a fellow brand hackonaut with us, and explore and be great. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your time.
Did I miss something?